Composer.
作曲家。
His father was also a composer of movie scores.
Differ.
と違う、異なる。
My ideas on the selection process differ from the rest of the committee.
Admission.
承認。
The plea bargain that he made was essentially an admission of guilt. Sticky.
ネバネバする、べとつく。
After putting on the new labels, our hands were very sticky.
Deeply.
深く。
We are deeply committed to helping Bruce get over his addictions.
Grown up.
大人になった、成人した。
We can't go see that movie unless a grown-up goes with us. Accidentally.
誤って。
He accidentally put that memo in the wrong box.
Interactive.
双方向の、相互に作用し合う。
The company just put an interactive help service on their website.
Impose.
考え、方針を押し付ける。
It is difficult to impose our cultural norms on people with different backgrounds. Considerable.
相当の、かなりの。
Ron has spent a considerable amount of time working on this project.
Adopt.
考え、方法などを採用する。
The entire school system chose to adopt the new math book for next year.
Poll.
世論調査、投票。
A poll showed that the president's popularity has fallen recently. Declare.
を宣言する。
You must declare a major by the end of your sophomore year.
Defeat.
を任す。
He defeated the other tennis player several times last year.
Criticize.
を批判する。
It is easy to criticize the teacher when you are on the outside looking in. Exhaust.
を使い果たす。
We have exhausted all reasonable means of negotiating with them.
Unemployment.
失業状態。
Since he took office, unemployment has been on the rise.
Twist.
糸などをよる。
If you squeeze while you twist off the cap, it will come open. Remarkable.
注目すべき、著しい。
There is a remarkable change in David since he began the new medication.
Widespread.
広範囲にわたる。
The disease is widespread throughout the continent of Africa.
Altogether.
全く。
She was not altogether convinced that Jerry could handle the task. Anxious.
切望して、とても従って。
I am anxious to hear more about your new business plan.
Destruction.
破壊。
The destruction is worse on the leeward side of the island.
Substantial.
数量がかなりの、相当の。
We have saved a substantial amount, so we should be in good shape. Typical.
典型的な、代表的な。
Such successful results from using this exercise program are not necessarily typical.
Frustrate.
計画、努力などをくじく。
The puzzle was not relaxing. It just frustrated me to no end.
Gradually.
徐々に、次第に。
Add the flour gradually to avoid lumps.
Luxury.
贅沢、
The luxury of an afternoon nap is something I haven't had in a while. Provision.
規定、条項。
The millionaire made a special provision for his sick grandson in his will.
Conscious.
を意識してに気づいて。
He wasn't conscious of the effect his speech had on the audience.
Transform.
外形、形態などを変える。
The outfit transformed Pete and made him look like a real gentleman. Beneath.
の下に。
The people in the apartment beneath us moved out last week.
Publisher.
出版社。
The publisher is having a party to launch the release of her new book.
Perspective.
観点、見方。
The latest study adds a fresh perspective to the problem. Persuade.
を説得する。
We tried to persuade Jessie not to leave home.
Relatively.
比較的に、割合に。
Roger responded to the message relatively quickly compared to before.
Eager.
熱望して、しきりに従って。
He was eager to be her assistant on the project. Commerce.
商業。
Commerce is growing in this region that used to be mostly agricultural.
Intention.
目的、狙い。
What are your intentions with regard to this program?
Nerve.
神経。
A symptom of the disease is pain in the nerves of the feet and hands. Inner.
内部の内側の。
Trevor is just an acquaintance. He isn't part of our inner circle.
Intense.
強烈な、激しい。
This is the most intense competition we have seen so far in this tournament.
Rural.
田舎の、田園の。
The bus schedule is different on the rural route. Tide.
潮、潮の看板、潮流。
The calendar gives us a complete schedule of the tides.
Intellectual.
知性の、知的な。
He prefers intellectual endeavors to sports and games.
Intelligence.
知能、理解力。
An eagerness to play is a sign of intelligence in dogs. Pave.
を舗装する。
The community got together and decided to pave the dirt road to the lake.
Relieve.
苦痛などを和らげる。
It may take a few minutes, but this cream should relieve your itching.
Accomplish.
仕事、計画などを成し遂げる、完結する。
With construction outside, it was too noisy to accomplish much work this morning. Noticeable.
人目を引く、目立つ。
He has had a noticeable amount of hair loss since I last saw him.
Separately.
別々に、から離れて。
We decided to speak to the witnesses separately.
Ridiculous.
馬鹿げた。
Throwing Rich into the swimming pool in his tuxedo was a ridiculous prank. Distinguish.
を、特別する、見分ける。
It is hard to distinguish one line from the next in your graph.
Rigid.
厳しい、厳格な。
The rules at the school used to be much more rigid.
Obstacle.
障害物、 邪魔者。
The principal's attitude created an obstacle to finding a solution in the meeting. Glue.
接着剤、糊。
It will look better if you use glue rather than tape.
Temper.
性質、気性。
He needs to work on controlling his temper around his children.
Essence.
本質、根幹をなすもの。
Bert's job is to take the essence of various flowers and create perfumes. Furthermore.
さらに、その上。
I'm not interested in the business, and furthermore, I don't like the product.
Particle.
ごく少量。
There are particles of dust on the slide that are distorting the data.
Persist.
あくまで主張する。に固執する。
If you persist in calling here, I will have to speak to an attorney. Thief.
泥棒。
The thief got away with all of Maria's jewelry.
Envy.
妬み、嫉妬、羨望。
When he got out of his new sports car, he was the envy of all his friends.
Pity.
哀れみ、同情。
If you really want to help Jason, give him support, not pity. Preference.
好み、ひいき。
My preference is fish, but I will take the chicken if that is all that is left.
Ratio.
比率、割合。
What is the ratio of powder to water?
Tidy.
きちんとした、整然とした。
Since she took over the chores, Hannah keeps the house very tidy. Infant.
幼児、児童。
Bringing an infant to the play was very thoughtless.
Precise.
正確な、精密な。
Could you be more precise about the meeting time and the discussion topics?
Fame.
名声。
He went to the West Coast in pursuit of fame and fortune. Outlook.
見通し。
The company had a rough year, but the outlook for next year is good.
Yell.
叫ぶ、わめく。
If you yell loud enough, someone will come down and open the door.
Transmit.
を送る。
This satellite here transmits television signals to home satellite receivers. Elevate.
を昇進させる。
You may be elevated to president when Mr. Henderson retires. Reportedly.
伝えられるところによれば。
Thompson reportedly sold his software company for $2 billion.
Dawn.
夜明け。
I got up at dawn to watch the sun rise over the water. Forbid.
を禁じる。
Jack's father would forbid him to go to an unsupervised party.
Lung.
肺。
Owen's lungs are weak from 40 years of smoking.
Pollute.
を汚す、汚染する。
This form of energy does not pollute the environment.
Juvenile.
青少年、少年、少女。
The court must decide whether to try Dan Simmons as a juvenile or as an adult. Thesis.
学位卒業の論文。
His thesis is on the practical applications of alternate power supplies.
Invade.
に侵入する、を侵略する。
During spring vacation, college students invade the beaches of Fort Lauderdale.
Ambitious.
待望を抱いた、野心的な。
I thought I could get all the work done in 5 hours, but that was too ambitious. Composition.
作曲、作文。
Evan's composition was about his early days in rural Texas.
Courtesy.
礼儀正しさ、丁重さ。
Please give me the courtesy of phoning before you show up at my house. Tempt.
を誘惑する、引きつける、したい気持ちにさせる。
I was tempted by the hamburger, but I ordered a salad. Wrinkle.
顔、衣服のシワ。
Some call the wrinkles around your mouth laugh lines.
Hospitality.
親切なもてなし、歓待。
The note in the mail was to thank us for our hospitality.
Needless.
不必要な。
The leader begged the opposing forces to cease the needless bloodshed. Boredom.
退屈、倦怠。
Soldiers have played cards around campfires to relieve boredom.
Semester.
米国の大学などで2学期制度の学期。
Chloe wants to spend a semester in Paris studying art.
Hemisphere.
地球天体の半球。
It is hot here, but this is ski season in the southern hemisphere. Prevention.
防止、予防。
Specialists are spending more time researching the prevention of heart disease.
Freshman.
新入生、1年生。
Sydney is now a freshman at the State University.
Disapproval.
不承知、不賛成。
The majority of the group passed the decision despite the chairman's disapproval. Foresight.
先見の明、洞察力。
Paul had the foresight to buy stock in internet search engine companies.
Diagram.
図表、図式。
The grammar book has lots of sentence diagrams in it.
Revolve.
回転する。
Developers want to put a restaurant that revolves on the top floor of the building. Inconsiderate.
資料分別のない。
Chatting with your friend during the lecture was terribly inconsiderate.
Pastime.
気晴らし、娯楽。
Playing golf at the country club is Harvey's favorite pastime.
Considerate.
思いやりのある。
Taking your sick friend some soup was a very considerate gesture. Overweight.
重量超過の太りすぎの。
A large percentage of the population is seriously overweight.
Simplicity.
簡素。
Japanese rock gardens are popular for their simplicity and ease of care.
Delinquency.
青少年の犯罪、非行。
Since it occurred when he was a juvenile, you can't mention his delinquency in court. Tuition.
授業料。
The notice says that the tuition is scheduled to increase by 5%.
Layoff.
一時解雇、レイオフ。
Dan lost his job with the electronics company due to layoffs.
Coastline.
海岸線。
You can see on the map that Highway 1 runs along the coastline. Reconsider.
を再考する、考え直す。
We would like you to work for us, so please reconsider our offer. Usher.
を案内する、先導する。
Phil ushered his guests into the library for an aperitif.
Skillful.
熟練した。
He is able to fillet the fish without much loss because he is so skillful. Sanction.
に対する制裁、措置。
Before the conflict began, there were sanctions against the country.
Civil.
教会に対して世俗の。
They decided to choose a civil ceremony over a religious wedding.
Resolution.
決意、決心。
We made a resolution to spend more time together as a family. Meanwhile.
その間、その間に。
I'll go shopping for food. In the meanwhile, you start making some rice.
Premium.
景品、賞、おまけ。
The sweets are used as a special premium for our preferred guests.
Charter.
貸し切り。
The meaning of special is that the bus is a charter for a private group. Capture.
を捉える。
If you capture all your opponent's pieces, then you win the game. Component.
構成要素、構成部分。
Visiting historical sites is a major component of this educational tour.
Command.
を命令する、指揮する。
The general commands thousands of soldiers, but his family doesn't listen to him.
Reluctant.
気が進まない、したがらない。
We were reluctant to get involved with the troubled teenager. Ultimate.
最後の、最終の。
The ultimate goal is to be able to run the full 26 miles.
Tackle.
に取り組む。
The government hasn't done anything to tackle this problem.
Plunge.
に飛び込む、突っ込む。
Check the temperature before you plunge into the pool. Discipline.
鍛錬。
Studying by yourself requires much more discipline than taking a class.
Poverty.
貧乏、貧困。
Driving through the area and looking at houses, the poverty is apparent.
Notion.
考え、見解。
The notion that more material goods make people happy is false. Leak.
水が漏れる。
A main water pipe is leaking under our sink.
Integrate.
を統合する、まとめる。
Will hopes to integrate his plan into the existing accounting system.
Drain.
排水管、下水溝。
A few gallons of used motor oil spilled into the drain. Ideal.
理想的な。
Raising your score about 20% would be ideal.
Disclose.
を暴く、明らかにする。
The lawyer is not able to disclose any of the information discussed with her client.
Compel.
に強いて、させる。
The story on the news compelled me to search for more information. Invisible.
目に見えない。
The clear thread will look invisible after we stitch it up.
Compile.
情報、資料などを収集してまとめる。
We need to compile a list of reputable journals to approach.
Ironic.
皮肉な。
It is ironic that I received this guidebook after I returned from my trip. Coincide.
同時に起こる。
The trip coincides with a festival in Hokkaido that I wish to attend.
Territorial.
領土の、土地の。
They settled the territorial dispute 3 years ago.
Compulsory.
強制された、義務的な。
Attending school is compulsory until age 16 in the United States. Conceal.
を隠す、秘密にする。
He was trying to conceal the book he stole when the guard caught him.
Conceive.
を心に抱く、考え出す。
We need to conceive a plan for a better fundraiser than the last one.
Thereafter.
その後は、それ以来。
ABCcom decided not to merge. Thereafter, the stock of the company has fallen constantly.
Confine.
を限る、閉じ込める。
If the puppy chews on furniture, you need to confine him to a smaller space. Conscience.
良心、道義心。
I told them everything I know, so my conscience is clear.
Formulate.
計画などをまとめる。
Let's formulate a plan for increasing the profit of our business.
Dirt.
汚れ。
That detergent gets out dirt, but it doesn't always get out odors. Evolution.
進化。
He is studying the evolution of dogs and wolves.
Logical.
論理的な、筋の通った。
You will be able to convince the committee better if your argument is logical.
Bump.
をドスンとぶつける。
The baby bumped his head on the table when he fell down. Bizarre.
奇怪な、異様な。
We thought the comments the councilman made in the newspaper were bizarre.
Biological.
生物学上の。
He has never lived with Liz, but she is his biological mother.
Misery.
惨めさ、悲惨さ。
He told the story of his misery with great drama. Linger.
長居する、ぐずぐずする。
We decided to linger over coffee and chat further.
Slam.
戸などをバタンと閉める。
Don't slam the door when you go out. Hold it until it shuts.
Bash.
をぶつける、強打する。
Dennis fell backwards and bashed his head against the garbage cans. Dismay.
をうろたえさせる、狼狽させる。
Do not be dismayed. Your attorney will figure out an amiable settlement.
Dye.
を染める。
When did you start to dye your hair red?
Nasty.
意地悪な。
I quit going to club meetings because the president was a nasty guy.
Backward.
後ろに。
Don't rely on the mirror. Look backward when you back up. Legitimate.
合法的な。
They found out that his lottery ticket was not legitimate.
Subordinate.
部下、従者。
While Shirley is out of town, her subordinate will be in charge.
Doctrine.
教義、学説。
The priest is explaining the basic doctrines of Buddhism to the group. Exclude.
を締め出す、除外する。
We cannot exclude him from the party just because we don't like him.
Coastal.
沿岸の
The coastal waters are filled with crabs in this season.
Distinct.
独特の
Coriander leaves have a distinct flavor that John doesn't care for. Reassure.
を安心させる
Orville did everything he could to reassure the investors about the project.
Sincere.
誠実な正直な
If that was an apology, it didn't sound very sincere.
Correspond.
一致する符合する
Choose the letter that corresponds to the correct answer. Inadequate.
不適切な不十分な
The ingredients were inadequate at the grocery store, so we got them elsewhere.
Decent.
きちんとした
Sam graduated 5 years ago, but he still doesn't have a decent job.
Realistic.
現実的な
Joy knew immediately that the budget they had approved was not realistic. Coordinate.
を調整するの調和をとる
We will try to coordinate the meeting with a visit from the chairman.
Immense.
巨大な広大な限りない
The new singer has been praised for his immense talent.
Ignorance.
無知知らないこと
That mistake was totally based on ignorance of the situation. Habitat.
植物の生育地動物の生息地
Unfortunately, rodents consider our automobile a suitable habitat.
Fragile.
壊れやすい脆い
Be careful when you carry that lamp into the other room. It's quite fragile.
Credible.
信用できる確かな
The lawyer didn't think that Kurt made a credible witness. Grasp.
をしっかりつかむ握る
If you grasp the handle this way, the door will open more easily.
Browse.
店の中を見て回る
I don't want to buy anything. I just want to browse through the selections.
Abbreviation.
省略形
The nickname Huck is an abbreviation of the name Huckleberry. Immigrate.
外国から移住する
Alberto wants to immigrate to Canada, where the rest of his family lives.
Dishonest.
不誠実な不正直な
Not putting all the ingredients on the label is illegal and dishonest.
Erase.
を消す
Why don't you just erase the title and start over?
Novelty.
目新しさ
The novelty of being in a new city wore off very quickly. Immerse.
をに浸す
After the party, I just wanted to immerse myself in a hot bath.
Rotation.
循環
The policeman saw the mugging during his usual rotation in the park.
Illiterate.
読み書きのできない
The number of illiterate adults in this country is startling. Incidental.
臨時の二次的な付随して起こる
I put away an extra $100 for incidental expenses.
Immature.
未熟の未完成の
She is too immature to handle a high school environment.
Neatly.
きちんと、小綺麗に。
The little girl had folded all of her clothes neatly on top of the dresser. Reward.
に報酬を与える。
Jenny offered to reward anyone who helped her find her pet.
Inheritance.
遺産。
Leo didn't earn that money. It is part of his inheritance.
Partition.
分割、区分。
This screen can be used as a temporary room partition. Density.
密集。
Lou's job is to measure the density of various liquid formulas.
Digit.
桁。
They have added one more digit to phone numbers in the city.
Affordable.
入手可能な、安価な。
The mayor's mission is to provide more affordable housing in the city. Endorse.
小切手などに裏書きする。
You need to have the document endorsed by a notary public.
Offense.
違反、反則。
He didn't go to jail because it was his first offense.
Sustainable.
耐えうる、持続できる。
Mary lectures about sustainable energy solutions at schools around the country. Justice.
正義、公正。
When the trial ended, it seemed that justice had not really been served.
Stake.
株、出資。
If you call now, you can still purchase a stake in Ethan's new venture.
Radical.
根本的な、基本的な。
The new uniforms represent a radical change in the group's image. Supreme.
最高の、この上ない、至上の。
Telling her that her food tasted like Chef Michel's was a supreme compliment.
Stable.
安定した、しっかりした。
Since she started working for the government, her income became more stable.
Index.
索引。
Look it up and see if that category is listed in the index. Legislation.
制定された法律、立法。
New legislation prohibits all smoking in restaurants in the city.
Tap.
を軽く叩く。
I didn't realize that Stuart had arrived until he tapped me on the shoulder.
Transaction.
業務、処理。
I got to the bank just before closing, so mine was their last transaction of the day. Deliberate.
故意の、を実行する。
Was not including Sonia's name on the report deliberate?
Sensible.
賢明な、分別のある。
Having a light meal before the hike was a very sensible idea.
Ballot.
投票。
I didn't see an independent party candidate on the ballot this time. Shell.
貝殻、殻。
When it is fried this way, it is sometimes possible to eat the shell of the shrimp.
Alliance.
同盟、提携。
The airline and the car rental company have formed an alliance.
Voluntary.
自発的な、志願した。
There is no draft, so military service is still voluntary.
Grave.
墓、墓場。
The shape of the grave often indicates heritage or religion. Casualty.
災害、事故。
The army has reported another casualty due to equipment failure.
Behave.
振る舞う、
The way Jordan behaves, it is hard to take him to a nice restaurant.
Bloody.
血のように赤い、血まみれの、
When he finished cutting the bananas off the tree, his hand was bloody. Spur.
を刺激する、駆り立てる、
The campaign is supposed to spur more business among young consumers.
Somehow.
なんとかして、
We drove there without a map, but somehow we found it.
Conviction.
確信、信念、
In order to get the audience to see it like that, you must speak with conviction. Verdict.
評決、
With new DNA evidence, they were able to overturn the verdict.
Alert.
警戒、警報、
Every day we receive virus alerts from our virus protection software.
Founder.
創立者、
The founder of the school was born on the same day as the emperor. Exploit.
を搾取する、食い物にする、
We do not believe that using the children's pictures in the catalog exploits them.
Spectacular.
壮観な、素晴らしい、
The fireworks display after the concert was simply spectacular.
Delegate.
代表、代議員、
The rules say that each organization can send one delegate to the symposium. Outstanding.
目立つ、顕著な、
He got a special award for his outstanding achievements in mathematics.
Tale.
話、物語、
The tale is told in the voice of the narrator as an older man.
Formidable.
非常に優れた、
Jonas did a formidable job as director of the program. Biography.
伝記、
There are many biographies written about Abraham Lincoln.
Bilateral.
双方の、二国間の、
Every other year, Japan and the USA meet for a bilateral conference on cultural issues.
Liver.
肝臓、レバー、
They also served grilled liver at the yakitori shops in Japan. Allocate.
を割り当てる、配分する、
We don't have enough in the budget to allocate funds for that this year.
Helpless.
どうすることもできない、無力な、
I wanted to do something when my friend became ill, but he was so bad that I was helpless.
Erupt.
火山、感情などが爆発する、
That volcano has not erupted in 200 years. Intimidate.
を脅してさせる、
They told us about the other company to try to intimidate us into lowering prices.
Stiff.
硬い、硬直した、凝った、
After the workout, my shoulders and arms were quite stiff.
Unacceptable.
受け入れられない、容認できない、
Doing your homework in pencil instead of pen is totally unacceptable. Amend.
法律などを改正する、修正する、
Now that the company has changed hands, we need to amend our agreement.
Uncertainty.
不確実、不安定、
Since the merger, there has been a lot of uncertainty among the managers.
Spectator.
見物人、観客、
Mac doesn't like to play baseball. He prefers to be a spectator. Integrity.
高潔、誠実、
My integrity prohibited me from agreeing to sell such dangerous items.
Tender.
柔らかい、
Speaking to his grandson was the first time the man used such tender words.
Spouse.
配偶者、
She asked if she could consult her spouse before making a final decision.
Handful.
一つかみ、一握りの量、
I just give Spot a handful of dog food twice a day. Fabulous.
素晴らしい、
The company did a fabulous job on our corporate brochures.
Ashamed.
恥じて、
The president of the company said he was ashamed of those involved in the incident.
Haul.
を運搬する、
You'll need a truck to haul that garbage to the refuse station. Lid.
蓋、
The lid to someone's trash can fell in the middle of the road.
Incentive.
誘引、刺激、動機、
There are special bonuses that are incentives for the sales force.
Fatal.
致命的な、命に関わる、
The bottle says that swallowing this substance can be fatal. Swift.
非常に速い、素早い、
I could tell by its swift movements that the dog was quite young.
Texture.
感触、手触り、
The art piece uses different textures along with bright colors.
Frontier.
未開拓分野、最先端、
The Brazilian frontier was like the US Wild West 100 years ago.
Unanimous.
満場一致の、
Putting Darren in charge of the book fair was a unanimous decision. Aviation.
飛行、
There's a small aviation museum right at our local airport.
Flour.
小麦粉、
We don't have enough flour in the house to make those cookies.
Awkward.
無様な、ぎこちない、気まずい、
Seeing her ex-husband at the play was a bit awkward for her. Inn.
小ホテル、宿屋、
It is too big to be considered a bed and breakfast. It is really a country inn.
Wardrobe.
持ち衣装、
Sheila said she didn't have anything in her wardrobe to wear to the big dance.
Lawsuit.
民事訴訟、
The company is not talking about the problem because there is a lawsuit.
Successive.
連続する、引き続く、
Because the numbers on the tickets are successive, Jim must be sitting next to you. Asylum.
保護施設、避難所、
The state asylum for children is closing, so they will be transferred to a hospital.
Supportive.
支える、支援する、協力的な、
Her partner was very supportive of her career change.
Kidney.
腎臓、
Chuck has kidney problems because of side effects of medication he took. Irritate.
をイライラさせる、
The way Kate monopolized the meeting started to irritate me.
Straightforward.
正直な、率直な、
You would get better results if your explanation were more straightforward.
Acquaintance.
知り合い、知人、
I wouldn't call Bill a friend. He is more of an acquaintance. Sting.
を刺す、
Those flies can sting, so you want to try to avoid them.
Aspiration.
熱望、野心。
Mindy's career aspirations include becoming a trial lawyer.
Barn.
納屋、
We aren't really using it as a barn these days. Hover.
鳥などが空に舞う、空中に停止する。
The hawk hovered overhead during most of our walk through the woods.
Exert.
を及ぼす。
After the marathon, Stan could barely exert enough energy to eat dinner.
Impatient.
せっかちな。
You won't have any luck threading that needle if you are too impatient. Strive.
懸命に努力する、奮闘する。
We strive to keep the standards higher at this school than most.
Bail.
保釈、
The judge set the accused man's bail at $50,000.
Induce.
を生じさせる、誘発する。
If someone accidentally ingests that chemical, you need to induce vomiting. Weird.
異様な、気味の悪い。
Jim started receiving weird phone calls in the middle of the night.
Frown.
眉を潜める。
If you frown, the makeup I'm applying will look funny.
Drastic.
重大な、深刻な。
The surgery sounded rather drastic considering the lack of symptoms. Plight.
悪い状態、苦境、窮状。
It wasn't until he had already quit the job that he considered his plight.
Depict.
を描写する、叙述する。
The story depicts the early life of a great statesman.
Dizzy.
めまいがする。
Riding the merry-go-round was fun for her daughter, but made her dizzy. Deduct.
を控除する、差し引く。
The company will deduct this loan payment directly from your salary. Celebrity.
名士、有名人。
Deirdre worked in a cocktail lounge before she became a celebrity.
Plea.
答弁。
The judge asked the defendant to enter a plea. Render.
をある状態にする。
The terrible pain in his chest rendered Mitch immobile for several minutes.
Offshore.
海外の。
They found out that he had several offshore bank accounts.
Dubious.
疑わしい。
It is dubious that Jason's explanation about the incident is what really happened. Defect.
欠点、欠陥。
When we asked about it, they said it was a common defect of the product.
Sequence.
連続、順序。
He is having a lot of trouble remembering the dance sequence.
Seemingly.
見たところ。
The novel ties together two seemingly unrelated incidents in different countries. Roar.
吠える、大声で笑う。
The crowd roared with laughter during her comedy routine.
Circulation.
発行部数。
The circulation of the magazine has increased by more than 50,000.
Renowned.
名高い、高名な。
The keynote speaker is a world-renowned expert on the subject. Prosecute.
を起訴する、告訴する。
They decided not to prosecute, so Jim is off the hook.
Obey.
命令、規則などを遵守する。
It is important for his safety that the dog learn to obey your commands.
Overturn.
をひっくり返す。
They expect the other branch of government to overturn the decision. Pronounce.
を発音する。
I think her name is Polish. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Duel.
二重の。
The handheld game comes with dual controls to compete with a friend.
Constitute.
を構成する、形成する。
He thought my version was lacking, so I don't know what constitutes a full report. Query.
反対や疑問を含んだ。質問。
If you want to see if they will publish your work, send a query letter first.
Quest.
探索、追求。
We went to several different shops in our quest for Asian ingredients.
Delightful.
非常に楽しい、愉快な。
He was rather boring, but his wife was delightful company. Preside.
議長を務める、司会する。
Since the president is ill, the vice president will preside over the meeting.
Bundle.
束、包み。
All of the firewood is in a bundle just outside the door.
Meantime.
その間、その間に。
I was out of vitamin C tablets, so I ate an orange in the meantime. Presume.
と推定する、思い込む。
Just because he talks softly, don't presume he is shy.
Bruise.
打撲傷、あざ。
The bruise on his arm is starting to turn a purplish color.
Martial.
戦争の。
Martial arts, such as karate and judo, are becoming more popular with women. Crouch.
うずくまる、かがむ。
Crouch under a large, sturdy piece of furniture that will protect you.
Defy.
を無視する、に反抗する、挑戦する。
She told her son not to go to the party, but he defied her.
Compliment.
を引き立てる、補完する。
The pronunciation class is an excellent complement to the intensive language course. Quarterly.
年4回の。
The Journal of Modern Alchemic Healing comes out quarterly.
Smuggle.
を密かに持ち込む。
They were told not to bring food along, but John smuggled in his favorite candy.
Sneak.
忍び歩く、こっそり動く。
The two boys sneaked into the movie theater through the back door. Ridge.
隆起。
After walking on the ridge of the mountain for about 2 hours, we found a deserted lodge.
Resemble.
に似ている。
Kelly doesn't resemble anyone else in her family.
Sober.
酔っていない。
He likes to drink, but he was completely sober the night of the incident. Perfection.
完全、完璧。
Alice takes longer to do that, but she strives for perfection.
Daylight.
日光。
Let's look for the stuff you dropped again when we have daylight.
Discrimination.
差別、差別待遇。
The purpose of the new law is to get rid of job discrimination. Fasten.
をしっかり留める、固定する。
Don't forget to fasten your seatbelts, please.
Digestion.
消化、消化力。
He told me that papaya was good for your digestion.
Illuminate.
を照らす、
The moon illuminated the area almost like sunlight.
Overestimate.
を過大評価する、
We are afraid that we overestimated Tom's abilities in this area. Diligent.
勤勉な、熱心に働く、
Lee was diligent with his studies throughout university and medical school.
Gifted.
天賦の才のある、才能に恵まれた、
Miss Cho is not only a singer, but a gifted violinist and pianist.
Inaccurate.
不正確な、間違った、
The information in the article was completely inaccurate. Recess.
休み、休憩、
The fifth graders have recess twice a day.
Indefinite.
不明確な、
The arrangements for the company dinner were still indefinite as of yesterday.
Recollect.
を思い出す、
Gina said she could barely recollect a time when Sam played with the kids. Amiable.
感じの良い、愛想の良い、
The new maid is not very efficient, but she seems quite amiable.
Indispensable.
不可欠な、なくてはならない、
Since I got my new computer, it has become indispensable to me.
Footstep.
足音、
We got scared when we heard strange footsteps on the grounds. Specialty.
専門、専攻、
Rodney majored in Asian studies, but his specialty is really Korea.
Infamous.
悪名の高い、
Jared's antics have made him infamous at his boarding school.
Apathy.
無感動、無関心、
It's okay if you don't like something, but your overall apathy is appalling. Comb.
櫛、
Have you seen the comb I keep in the bathroom drawer?
Flaw.
欠点、あら、
The scarf was marked down because of the flaw in the material.
Flatten.
を平らにする、
Let's break down and flatten out the boxes so we can transport them more easily. Flatly.
きっぱりと、
I asked Pat to go with me to talk to her, but he flatly refused.
Flame.
火、火炎、炎を上げて燃える、
The flame on the stove in the kitchen of that Chinese restaurant is always high.
Despise.
を軽蔑する、
He told us that he despised his stepfather. Fluency.
滑らかさ、流暢さ、
Living in Kyoto has really improved your Japanese fluency.
Misfortune.
不運、不幸、
We heard all about the company's recent misfortune.
Plural.
複数、複数形、
There is no S in the plural of those Latin words. Width.
幅、広さ、
Let's measure the width of the chair so we can look for seat covers.
Discern.
をはっきり認める、
His handwriting was so messy I couldn't even discern his name.
Vomit.
を吐く、戻す、
I called the vet because the dog kept vomiting after meals. Stoop.
かがみ込む、前かがみになる、
The photographer has stooped down to take her picture.
politely.
丁寧に、礼儀正しく。
I explained politely that I was not interested in the position.
Muddy.
泥だらけの、ぬかるみの。
After I spilled the water, we had muddy footprints everywhere. Humbly.
謙遜して、へりくだって、慎んで。
I humbly request that someone else take over these duties.
Simultaneously.
同時に。
Actually, the computer glitch and the power failure occurred simultaneously.
Billionaire.
億万長者。
Why does she argue over pennies if she is a billionaire? Acceleration.
加速度、促進。
This looks like a sedan, but it has the acceleration of a sports car.
Wretched.
惨めな、哀れな、悲惨な。
For such a good actor, I found his performance in the new comedy wretched.
Stationary.
動かない、静止した。
The restaurant is on a boat that always remains stationary in the harbor.
Envelop.
を包む。
When we walked into the kitchen, the smell of chicken soup enveloped us. Loaf.
一塊のパン。
Sandy stopped at the store to pick up a loaf of bread.
Solitary.
一人の、孤独な、独居者。
The elderly lady has led a solitary life since her husband was killed in the tragic accident.
Presently.
現在、目下。
Presently, we have more children signed up for the program than we can handle. Lighten.
を軽くする。
I can't carry this much through the airport. I need to lighten my carry-on bag.
Tactics.
戦術。
They usually get the bid, but we think their promotion tactics are questionable.
Ominous.
不吉な、縁起の悪い。
The dark sky left an ominous feeling about the day's weather outlook. Aisle.
座席間などの通路。
You can find sugar on the aisle marked baking needs.
Glide.
滑る、滑らかに動く。
Once you get used to the ice skates, you will be able to glide around easily.
Rust.
錆。
The metal clasps of the old suitcase were covered in rust. Roam.
歩き回る、徘徊する。
After we arrived, we just roamed around the city.
Probability.
見込み。
The probability of running into him in a city this size is very small.
Commemoration.
記念、記念祭。
The commemoration of the organization's 50th anniversary is the reason for the party. Plunder.
略奪、略奪品。
The art pieces were actually Nazi plunder.
Kneel.
ひざまずく、膝を曲げる。
Unlike the Catholic Church, parishioners don't kneel here.
Attain.
を達成する、獲得する。
The level of achievement you can attain depends on the effort you expend. Rudely.
突然、不意に。
Ron was rudely awakened by the screaming of the children next door.
Irresponsible.
責任感のない、無責任な。
Not training people in the operation of that machinery is totally irresponsible.
Courageous.
勇気のある、勇ましい。
Remaining in the war-torn area to report the news was very courageous. Clearance.
除去、撤去。
The huge warehouse clearance sale starts on Friday.
Outburst.
火山、感情などの爆発、噴出。
There was an angry outburst from some employees when the merger was announced.
Pertain.
に関係がある。
I can't see how that information pertains to the problem. Fume.
悪臭のする煙、臭気、蒸気、ガスを煙でいぶす。
The spray kills germs in the air, but the fumes are very strong.
Heed.
に気をつける、従う。
You will be sorry if you don't heed her warning.
Proficient.
熟達した、堪能な。
Daisuke is proficient at both English and Chinese. Debatable.
議論の余地のある。
Whether or not Fran did a better job than Sue is debatable.
Cozy.
居心地の良い。
Sarah's little apartment is quite cozy.
Pilgrimage.
巡礼、行脚。
The group makes a pilgrimage to various holy sites every year. Portray.
を描写する。
The story portrays the life of Abraham Lincoln as a boy.
Warranty.
保証書。
You should have the oven serviced this month before the warranty expires.
Cuisine.
料理法。
Catherine was trained in the art of French cuisine in Paris. Imbue.
に思想、主義などを吹き込む。
At his daughter's birth, Curtis was imbued with a joy he'd never experienced.
Willingness.
進んですること。
His willingness to cooperate made the police less suspicious of him.
Imperative.
絶対に必要な、必須の。
It is imperative that you read the manual before operating the machine. Plaintiff.
原告。
The lawyer for the plaintiff was not present due to a death in the family.
Vendor.
物売り、行商人。
They have asked her to be a vendor at the next event.
Grocer.
食料雑貨店、商人。
The grocer told me that he could order the spice for me. Misinterpret.
を誤解する、誤って解釈する。
If you don't read it carefully, it is easy to misinterpret.
Commotion.
大騒ぎ、騒動。
There was quite a commotion when the musician walked through the crowd.
Displeasure.
不快、不機嫌。
You could see his displeasure in his expression. Oust.
を追い出す。
Luke was ousted from Kelly Communications when the CEO changed.
Keynote.
基調、基本。
Dr. Morton was asked to give the keynote speech at this year's conference.
Obliterate.
を抹消する、除去する。
The car bomb was so intense it obliterated all potential evidence. Audit.
の会計監査をする。
The government has asked to audit the company's records.
Civilize.
を文明化する、強化する。
The missionaries arrogantly believe they will civilize the natives.
Chronicle.
年代記、物語、歴史書。
This collection of papers is an important chronicle of our family history. Ramble.
取り留めなく話す、書く。
I want to change the end of the letter where I ramble on too much.
Momentous.
極めて重大な。
The opening of the new bridge was a momentous occasion for the island.
Disbelief.
不信、疑惑。
He looked at her in disbelief when she asked for a divorce. Miscellaneous.
種々雑多の。
It was hard to categorize the CD, so we put it in the miscellaneous group.
Candid.
率直な、包み隠しのない。
The movie star gave a candid interview about her husband's illness.
Middleman.
仲介者。
Our firm works as a middleman between the seller and the buyer. Meteorological.
気象の。
Some weather reporters just read from a script and don't understand meteorological phenomena.
Elude.
から逃れる、を巧みにかわす。
He eluded his client by sending his assistant to meet with him.
Solicit.
を強く求める、懇願する。
They solicited volunteers to work at the rummage sale. Entice.
を誘う、そそのかして、させる。
We agreed to cook dinner for him to entice him to come and help us.
Longevity.
長生き、寿命。
His mother died young, but there is quite a bit of longevity on his father's side.
Mandatory.
命令の強制的な、義務的な。
In that country, military service is mandatory for young men.
Infuriate.
を激怒させる。
His disregard for others always infuriates me. Reap.
を刈る、刈り取る。
Be considerate. You reap what you sow.
Frenzy.
熱狂、逆上。
You'll find the missing document. Don't work yourself into a frenzy.
Incriminate.
を告発する。
Finding the weapon on his property is what incriminated him. Incumbent.
現職の。
The incumbent governor cannot run for office again.
Demolish.
を取り壊す、破壊する。
The purpose of the game is to demolish your opponent's vehicle.
Congressional.
議会の、国会の。
There are congressional sessions scheduled for the next 2 weeks. Peculiarity.
奇妙、風変わり。
I noticed a good deal of peculiarity in Rob's behavior at the meeting.
Deploy.
軍隊を展開させる、配置する。
The leader has decided not to deploy troops in the area.
Apiece.
それぞれ、別々に。
Let's price the jams at $5 apiece. Influx.
流入。
We had an influx of inquiries following the newspaper ad.
Appendix.
付属物、付録。
See if you can find that reference in the appendix of the book.
Compliance.
服従。
The board made sure that the school was in compliance with its standards. Derail.
を脱線させる。
Every comment Roger made was meant to derail the negotiations.
Devastate.
を困惑させる。
The news about the accident just devastated my mother.
Fertility.
想像力などの豊かさ。
The test will give you much more information about your fertility. Briefing.
事前の打ち合わせ、説明。
They explained the rules at a briefing.
Remit.
を送る、送金する。
We need to remit the seminar fees by the 12th of the month.
Overpower.
を圧倒する、味、色などを殺す。
Barry is a solid leader, but he sometimes overpowers meetings. Aquatic.
水中の。
The book includes various stories of an aquatic nature.
Arson.
放火罪。
We think that the cause of the fire was arson after all.
Dire.
差し迫った。
We are in dire need of a bilingual secretary. Ascent.
登ること、上昇。
The movie tells the story of his ascent to power.
Configuration.
配置。
If you don't like this configuration, we can work up another plan.
Related.
親類の。
Yes, Charles and I are related on my mother's side. Rumor.
噂。
We heard a rumor that the expected strike won't take place.
Diagnose.
病気などを診断する。
The doctor used a blood test to diagnose the disease.
Buyout.
買い占め、買収。
William acquired the company through a major buyout. Collectible.
収集の価値がある。
Save the jar from the pickled vegetables because it is collectible.
Deregulate.
の規制を緩和する。
If the government would deregulate utilities, the prices would come down.
Desperately.
必死に、懸命に。
Mick called us last week, desperately looking for a loan. Eternally.
絶えず。
We would be eternally grateful if you find it in your heart to contribute.
Non-refundable.
払い戻しできない。
I got a cheap airfare for my trip, but the ticket is non-refundable.